I'm gonna start now. Hi, my name is Lena. And welcome to the Digital Kragen Classic series hosted by the American Alpine Club and CAMP. The American Alpine Club is a great organization and resource for climbers. So if you're not already a member, I highly recommend joining or at least thinking about it. So I am just to dive right into introductions. I'm primarily a sport climber. I started as a boulderer and kind of brought that bouldering mindset of being big into projecting to my sport climbing. And that's why I'm here teaching this, specifically this projecting clinic. So to give a little background on my climbing, um, I started out bouldering, wanted to switch to sport climbing. Wasn't advancing very fast and realized it's because I wasn't taking projecting seriously. So once I started implementing some of these skills that I'll be talking about today, I went from climbing just a handful of 511s to climbing my first 512 within a few months to climbing my first couple of 513s within a year. So, and of course, some training went into it, but a big portion of that for me was just learning how to project. So I would like everybody to introduce themselves as well. I'm going to start with Seth. Could you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, hi everybody. I'm Seth. I'm from Baraboo, Wisconsin, home of Devil's Lake State Park, and I'm primarily just a boulderer.
Great. And Erin.
Hi, I'm Erin. I live in Denver, Colorado. I started out in bouldering, and I've slowly over the years kind of gone over more to sport climbing, but I still really love like bouldering, especially like competition style climbing. So yep, that's me.
Great. I want to make sure, I don't know if I'm gonna like pronounce everyone's names correctly or if I have everybody or if your names on your screens are correct, your names, but I'm gonna just keep calling on people. Emily.
Hi, I'm Emily. I live in Utah since we're doing that, I guess. I don't even think I've been climbing a year yet, but I mostly sport climb.
My name's Andrew, and I would basically put myself in the same category. So,
Great. And Clara.
Hey, I'm Clara. I split my time between Bend, Oregon, and I actually just bought a place in Syriana. So once the borders open again, I will hopefully be back there. I am a sport climber, trad climber, alpine climber, and a terrible boulderer. And I was just starting to project my first 8A when coronavirus happened, and I haven't climbed since then.
And Jean, is that right?
My name is Jeannie. I'm in Portland, Oregon right now. Sometimes I live in Claremont, California for school, but I primarily boulder. I'm getting into sport climbing. This past year I did a lot of outside climbing and I really enjoy sports, so I'm just learning more about that right now.
And who else? Do we have who hasn't introduced themselves yet? I know we have a few people here. Let's see. Yes.
Yeah, I guess I'll speak up. Hi, I'm Michael. I'm currently in California, and yeah, I'm mostly sport climb.
All right, great. And okay, is that everybody? Has everybody introduced themselves?
Oh, hey, I'm Nicole. I'm from DC and I primarily sport climb.
All right, great. Welcome. Thank you, everybody. All right, so we're just going to dive into unlocking a crucial beta. One second, let me make sure I got this correct. Unlocking crucial beta. Is everybody seeing that? Is that successfully being shared? All right, great.
Yeah,
perfect. Unlocking crucial data. So why is it important? Sometimes sending or not sending can actually come down to micro beta. So having the right beta for you and knowing exactly how to execute that beta can help you send your projects. In this online course, you'll learn how to approach your projects and ways to lock down beta that works for you. And if anyone has any questions at any point, feel free to chime in or comments. So eliminating fear of the unknown. This is sort of the very first step when it comes to climbing. For me, coming from a bouldering background, my lead head was and still is not the greatest. So the biggest crux when you first approach your project is oftentimes your headspace. You want to eliminate this fear by getting well acquainted with the project. I think a lot of times what we're scared of is just what we don't know, and that comes to roots as well. So clip bolt to bolt. I mean, if you're on a route that you really, if maybe you've already tried to send it, or you've tried an on-site attempt and it didn't work, or this is a big project that you're not going to on-site, climb it bolt to bolt. Give yourself that emotional space to slowly get acquainted with the route. If you're scared of any sections, if the bolts are close enough, go directly in and clip up. If you have the option, don't be afraid to top rope it. We can put our egos aside when it comes to projecting. So whatever your method is, get acquainted with the route, take the fear out of it, take the fear of falling out of it by top roping or clipping up or climbing bolt to bolt. If there are any sketchy clips that look dangerous, or clips that look hard to clip, practice clipping them. Like, figure out a way, come up with a plan on how you're going to clip it. Find the hold, find the foothold, your body positioning. Just make it easy to clip. Find a way to do it. And then identify if there are any no fall zones. So distinguish if there's a spot that you really don't want to fall on. Is it actually dangerous? Or is it just scary? Is it just run out, but if you do fall, are you just going to swing into air? So distinguish if the no fall zones are actual no fall zones or if it's just an emotional no fall zone. Next. Finding the crux and the red point crux. So the crux is the obvious hardest section of the route, but that may or may not be what stops you from sending. So what stops you from sending is the red point crux. That's what gets in the way of you sending. Those two things can be the same thing. Oftentimes it is, but sometimes it isn't. So the distinct cruxes are usually easy to find. They'll stop you right away. But the red point cruxes might not appear until you're actually ready to red point. Now, red pointing, because this clinic is for people of all levels, red point means to climb to the top of the route without taking or falling. So that's sending, basically. Red pointing is sending, but not on your first go. So the work and mental mapping when approaching the route. Break the route apart. En route, create a mental map of the route. Find the easy sections, the difficult sections, and then piece together reasonable links within your climbing ability. So as an example, we have a 10-bolt route. Let's say we have a 10-bolt route, and bolts 1 to 4 is 5-10 climbing. So that's, within my on-site ability. And then bolt 5 to 7 is maybe a V5 crux. So that's the hardest part of the route. Maybe that's worth remembering how to do the beta on. Bolt 8 to 10 is the 5-10 climbing with maybe one move of 5-11. So again, it's just kind of hanging on, but maybe not letting your guard down. So break the route into sections, into manageable sections, especially if you're a boulderer. I think this really helps. It really helped me. So in the previous example, that V5, like we said, is the obvious crux, but it's possible you run out of steam before you get to the 5-11 move up top. So maybe the obvious crux is the V5, but in this example, that 5-11 move up top might be what's stopping you from sending. So to kind of move past that, first and foremost, climb the crux repeatedly. Earlier, we talked about clipping up. Once you climb the crux, lower back down again, climb it again, climb it again, climb it again. And if it feels hard, see if there's try a different way. Oftentimes there's several different ways to do a move, to do a section. So look for holds you might be missing, identify the best way, the best beta for you. That might not be the same as your partners or your friends, because we have different strengths. Some people are taller, shorter, stronger in different ways. So find what's best for you and just look around to see if there's any secret holes. That sometimes happens too. Once you find the beta that works best for you, for the most part, stick with that beta. Don't change it on the fly. For the most part, stick with that beta. So in that previous example, the beginning and the closing sections were easy and within your range. So you might not have to memorize it. You might just be able to wing that every time you climb it. But if you feel like you're having trouble keeping your endurance through the crux or losing steam up top, it could be worth memorizing the easy sections. All right. So final touches, your cruxes are identified, the hard moves are memorized, you're really close to sending, you just haven't sent yet. You can do all the moves, you're just not sending. So that's when you examine why. Is the crux move a low percentage move? Are you being stopped at the actual crux? Is there a better, more static way? It might be worth looking into changing your beta. I know I just said we stick with our beta, but if you're getting stopped at the crux every single time, it's possible that there's something else there. So again, sometimes the holds that you have are the ones that you got and you got to use them. Sometimes there are secret ones hiding. So revisit your beta on the crux. Or you may be running out of energy, or you do not have enough endurance. In that case, can you climb the easy parts more efficiently? Sometimes in routes, because there's so many moves, we're doing things that we don't need to do, like matching on something we maybe don't need to match on, or doing something in multiple moves instead of just doing it in one move. So start to dial in your beta on the easy parts and maybe memorize them. If you memorize them, you might be able to climb it more efficiently. So to memorize, again, just like the crux, climb it over and over again, find your beta and make it like a choreograph, like it's like you're dancing. Choreograph your moves. And then if you're still not sending, have you identified where to rest? Are you resting enough? I think with sport climbing, I can't stress resting enough. This is one of the, I think, biggest things. If you can learn to rest on holds that aren't the best, or find ways to position your body to rest as much as you can, your chances of sending longer routes or routes in general will go up. So find your resting beta. Resting beta is a real thing. And then finally, is your clipping beta as efficient as it can be? So in a recent project that I had, there was one clip that was just hard to clip, and every time I clipped it, I would fall a couple of moves after. So I identified if this clip was even worth clipping. And this was a long route, and it was over this hard clip was over halfway up. So I decided that I could skip it. If I skipped it and I fell before the next clip, no matter where I fell, I wouldn't deck. It was safe. It was just scary. So I made the decision to skip that clip. Now, I'm not asking people to willy-nilly just skip clips, because it could be dangerous and it could be scary, but identify what's stopping you. And if it's clipping, find a new way to clip. If you need to, you could maybe even skip it. Route by route, don't just willy-nilly skip. Really study a route before you do that. All right, so things to keep in mind. So even though you have the route memorized, things don't actually have to go perfectly. I know I said it's choreographed, and sometimes I think when we get too locked into something, if anything goes wrong, we're like, oh, nope. It's not, this isn't part of my choreography. I have to start over. That's not the case. So let go of the idea that if a foot slips, or you mess up, or the sun isn't at the right angle, or the temps are wrong, or whatever it is, that you won't send. You can send even when conditions aren't perfect. You can send if you mess up your beta. You can recover from mistakes. So don't give up. I know that sounds so obvious, but I think when we get into the nitty-gritty of projecting, that tends to happen. It happens to me a lot, and I always have to talk myself out of giving up when I make minor mistakes. You need to be realistic about your projects, but don't be afraid to get out of your comfort zone. So, like I was saying earlier, I um, I had climbed 2 511s before I climbed my first 512, and then I'd climbed 4 512s before I climbed my first 513. And so I know sometimes things feel like they're out of reach, but if you project them enough and push yourself out of your comfort zone, it is possible to climb a lot of things that you didn't think you could climb. And then when on route, throw out any negative self-talk. I think a lot of people tend to do this. I'm definitely guilty. It doesn't help. It doesn't help to think negatively when you're en route. So squash any feelings of uncertainty and just be the best hype man ever to yourself. Last but not least, breathe. I know that seems very obvious, but I think a lot of people get caught up on this. If you consciously breathe out, you will subconsciously breathe in. So if you actively make sure you're always breathing out, your body will make sure you're breathing in. So that are my main talking points. And now I want to open up the floor and talk a little bit about people's goals and how we can reach them. So I'm going to get out of this screen sharing real quick. A moment. Okay, great. Okay, so some people sent in some of their goals. I would like to talk a little bit about them. I want to open up the floor again. So we're going to start again with Seth. Tell us a little bit about your goals. And I believe you sent me an email about some of your goals. If you also have specific either routes or grades or ranges that you want to climb, please let us know.
Yeah, for sure. 1 second. Let me see if I can bring up that email. But yeah, I mean, I had a few goals like, for short term, medium term, and long term. Just one quick second. Here we go. Yeah, so for me, as a boulderer, only been in it for like a few years, and given how 2020 has been challenging with, hardly getting out, I'm trying to build better strength with a healthier core, like a more firm core to help better balance across the body, to help keep my body like fully balanced and in check as I'm climbing. And ultimately it kind of like coincides with like the long term, also like continuing to grow more confident, trusting my body, like finding equilibrium between my body and mind. Some of the things I do have issues with that, once I kind of find myself getting to a better state of practice, is that inability to breathe. You finally get up to like say like a V3, V4 out at Baraboo or Devil's Lake State Park, excuse me. You find yourself just all of a sudden looking down, you got like exposed talus field below you where it's like dangerous fall, and you've got only a couple of crash pads around you, and you just know at the right angle, if you just fall just by a fraction, you could hit some of that nasty talus. So then all of a sudden your breathing just goes away, like you're just holding in and kind of like encapsulated by the fear. And so that's something I really need to work on a lot. And that's where I have a lot of difficulties, especially when I'm going for those more challenging and slightly more dangerous routes.
Great. So one of the biggest things you're saying, if I'm hearing you correctly, is that you're having trouble breathing. Is that just because you're scared?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, like I'm one that's not truly full of fear a lot, but when it comes to like, yeah, on the East Bluff of Devil's Lake, that's where a lot of the really, really nice, awesome bouldering routes are. A lot of them on the south side of East Bluff are just, it's all exposed talus of this Baraboo granite and quartzite. And, you get yourself, quite a ways up, and even like if you're on a narrow trail, you're like looking down and you're like, oh man. So yeah, I definitely have a hard time, then all of a sudden, like I just sink into like this fear mentality of, oh crap, I'm not gonna fully send this, or if I fall, I I could be royally screwed. So yeah, it's just a matter of, overcoming that fear and trying to fully send it, and, keeping my balance in check with my mind. So yeah, the fear and the breathing is a huge factor.
Yeah, okay, I see. So, I often, when I first had found myself having trouble breathing, besides, doing yoga and learning how to breathe a little bit, another big thing that I kept in mind was having sort of a ritual or a pattern so that you really focus on your breathing when you first start practicing the concept of breathing. And then once it can really be anything, just like breathe in and out, or in through your nose, out your mouth, or whatever it is. And once you do it enough times, it'll become second nature. So
Cool.
I think, like you said, breathing is a big deal. Obviously we need it to live, but also if you don't breathe, you're going to get pumped out, and if you pump out, whatever you're doing is going to become even more dangerous. So I think that's a wonderful thing to work on. Do you also ever head point? Do you ever top rope your bouldering projects?
I'm sorry, what was that?
Do you ever try to top rope your bouldering projects for like a head
No,
pointing? If
no.
it's and is there like an ethic against it in the area, or have you just never tried it?
I guess I just never tried it. I try to, I know we got a pretty promising group around Devil's Lake in the Baraboo area, but it's a matter of trying to, find people that kind of coincide with like my schedule. I'm traveling a lot. And so whenever I come back home to the Baraboo area, it's difficult. And given this year, especially to find any partners in climbing or bouldering has been even more challenging. So
Yeah, I can imagine. So definitely, I would look into, if I were you, getting some sort of top rope setup for bouldering. It's not that hard, and also really will help. This whole top roping thing and taking fear out, like I talked about earlier, I think is a huge key to sending harder.
cool. Thanks.
Great, of course. Let's see who else. Jeannie, I'm sorry, is that right? I just
Yeah, that's right.
All right,
So
great. Could you talk a little bit about your goals?
yeah, so I like wrote just like a short-term thing is just more knowledge on like sport climbing, and I've been taking like classes on that, so like building knowledge, but it's definitely like a lot of knowledge to know to make sure that you're safe and stuff. So um, and then like one of my medium-term goals was like climb V5s more consistently. I just climbed my first V5 like this week, and then during this week I got like two more, so I'm like really happy about that. But that was, I guess, more my medium-term goal. And then my long-term goal is like work on more technique, like flexibility, core strength, and I guess general strength to help me like climb, be a more efficient climber. And so I put that as my like long-term goal because I want to like continue to work on that. Um, yeah.
Great. Okay, so your medium term goal, like you said, is consistently climbing more V5s. In general, your long term goal is just getting stronger, becoming a more efficient climber. Do you have any specific grade ranges or anything like that? You said you also want to lead climb, is that right?
Yeah, I've like climbed like a couple times, but yeah, like sport climbing is something I'm like new at, I guess. So yeah.
All right, great. Next, let's see, Emily. And
Hi. So my short-term goal is to just get a 10B outside on lead. I actually like only recently just like top roped my first 10B clean outside, but I think I could have led it if I had tried. But so that's my short-term goal. I think I should be able to knock that down soon. My medium-term goal is to like work more on my head game. So we've done a couple multi-pitch recently, and I get a little stressed once we get more exposed. So I just want to like work more on like feeling comfortable in those, or I don't have to feel comfortable, but I have to like feel okay, I guess, like during those situations. Like I do a lot of talking to myself, and that is also kind of getting in the way of like trying as hard as I would like to be able to try, like at those heights and things like that. And my long-term goal is I want to lead every pitch on like a long adventure route. And like my initial idea is there's this route near us called Squawstruck, which is like the longest sport route. And that would be like really, really dope. It's like an 11 AB, 22 pitches. So that
Oh,
would
wow.
yeah, it's like 1900 feet.
You
but
said you're based out of Utah, is that right?
yeah.
Where is that? I'm originally from Salt Lake. Where is
Oh,
that?
really? It's in Rock Canyon, if that means anything to you.
Cool. It does. I unfortunately don't know where that is, but that just sounds really awesome.
It's in Provo.
I was really curious. Okay. Oh, Rock Canyon. Yeah, yeah. Okay, in Provo.
Yeah.
Yeah, there are the long multi-pitches there. I haven't really done very many of them, but I see. So you were saying that, the 10B, you top roped it, you felt like you could have led it if you tried. What stopped you from trying?
Well, the first time I did it on top rope, I got like too pumped at this one part, even though I was really stoked with my beta like up until then. But then I just got really tired because it was short. This was at Maple, if that means anything to people. So short, classic.
Right.
So then I tried it again because I was pretty sure I could get it clean, and I did. But then I was pondering it, but I was like, I don't know that I can go do it a third time and do it clean on lead. And like, I didn't really think about leading it going into it. I just wanted to get it done clean.
I see. Gotcha. So that just wasn't your goal for the day to lead it. The goal for the day for you was to top rope it clean.
Yeah.
I see. Okay, great. And what was your goal? I'm sorry, what was your name again?
Right. Yeah, Andrew.
Andrew.
Yeah. So my kind of short-term goal is just to basically be projecting a route on lead. I feel like I really kind of constrict myself to like routes I can lead and do either on like an onsite attempt, or like the onsite attempt just like figures out the beta and then I'm like can do it on the next one, or there are routes that I can't do, and there's kind of like no area in between right now. So like basically being able to actually like work on a route for like more than like 2 attempts. Just like, I don't know, getting in the headspace of like finding out where I can improve. I feel like a lot of times I get stuck because I'm like, well, I just can't do that move. And so like being like potentially just having the patience, but also just like figuring out ways to like chip away at that beta. And then kind of a medium term goal is like being able to do max effort moves on lead. I feel like I really do that well bouldering in the gym and stuff like that. And then I go to lead and it feels like a different world where I like feel like I can't try as hard because like I feel much more comfortable falling bouldering than I feel like leading. So that's a little bit of the head game as well. And then yeah, like a long-term goal would be to like lead 12A. I just feel like that seems like a cool goal to get to eventually. But, yeah.
Great. Yeah, it is my belief that if people aren't projecting, whatever you're sending without projecting, so whatever you're getting an on-site or 2 to 3 goes, you can probably climb at least a whole number grade harder if you project it. That is, if you can climb 11A, in on-site 11A, then it is my belief that for the most part, I'm not saying you climb every single 12A on Earth, but
Sure.
that 12A is absolutely within your range if you project. That was my experience personally. I've also seen it in a lot of other people. And so I think that some of the things did you have any questions on some of on the slide? I know a lot of it was kind of generic, but did you have any questions on?
No, I think that was good. I mean, yeah, we don't tend to like go to places like a bunch of times in a row. So I haven't like picked out routes outdoors that are more projecting, but like definitely in the gym, I feel like that. Like there's routes that I feel like are unattainable, and I feel like I don't know. I feel like sometimes I don't think of just like going bolt to bolt in the gym where it's like much more reasonable to, because the bolts are so close together and all that kind of stuff. And where I'm kind of like, well, if I get halfway up and I can't do it, like I can't do it. But like I think getting a better mindset maybe is where I can improve there. So yeah.
I kind of had a question about if the red point crux is more related to like an endurance issue, and like maybe it's not even necessarily near the top of the route per se, but it's like a section that you thought wasn't that bad when you were doing it like bolt to bolt, but then you realize when you like you have to do it after some other sequence, you're way more tired and it's a lot harder. Do you, besides like repeating the section before or something though, is that like something that you think about for training like outside of that route, like to bring in, like if you feel like the problem is endurance, do you think it's better to focus on dialing like that exact route, or to be like, well, maybe I just need to like train more endurance and like do the tread wall, or I don't know, something like that?
Yeah, I think training always helps, training always helps. But if you have the project in front of you right now and you're trying to figure out how to send it, you can't train immediately in front of your route, right? So I think it's sort of both. You get on a route, you learn your weaknesses, you go home and you train those weaknesses. But another thing is just pure strategy. So red point crux, I know in the example I gave was like an endurance red point crux, but sometimes it's not that. Sometimes it's this move isn't hard, but it's like a low percentage. It's not a hard move, but I launch to it and I might miss it. So it can be a lot of things. But in that specific example, it was you run out of steam, and that's kind of the crux of the red point. So I would say, of course, training is always beneficial, but I think a lot of projecting is actually strategy.
Okay.
So in that example that you're talking about, if you thought it wasn't bad, but that by the time you get there it's tiring, think along the route. Is there a huge jug or even a decent hold that you can rest on? Is there a place where you can shake out a few times? Sometimes it feels counterproductive when you're shaking out because you're like, oh my gosh, I just want to quickly climb through. But if you do it enough times, you'll realize that it's actually not. Sometimes you need quick break, move, quick break, move. And it feels like it might be counterproductive, but actually in that quick shakeout, you might regain enough energy for one more move to shake out this hand for one more move.
Mm-hmm.
So it's more just strategy.
Okay, that makes sense.
Great. All right, moving on to Erin.
So I feel like I'm really similar with a lot of you guys. Like my short-term goal is just kind of getting a better headspace. I feel like where the local crags that I'm near, like they're bolted a little bit more closely than other crags I've been to. Because I just recently went to New Mexico and climbed around there. And I was just like freaked out the entire time because I was like, oh my gosh, these bolts are so far apart and I can't even like climb well because I'm just like so scared of falling. But I think like just getting used to that idea, like pushing myself, like doing routes that I'm scared of, like maybe doing routes that I'm a little not as comfortable with. Because I'm really comfortable with like overhanging routes because if you fall, it's like super safe. You can just fall into dead safe. But with like more vertical, like crimpy routes, which is what I tend to be better at, I'm actually more scared of. So that's like my short-term goal, just like getting out there and just like exposing myself to things that scare me. And then my midterm goal, which is actually what I wanted to ask you about, is I don't know, like I've done a few 12As, and I really want to do like a 13A, and that's like my long-term goal. But I feel like I don't know if that's jumping like too far ahead because I'm super inspired by it. Like that's a big, level to get to. But I don't know if I should do like a 12 like C or 12B like in the interim as like a midterm goal, or if I should just like go for it and just do like something that I'm inspired by.
I am personally a huge advocate for just doing things that you're inspired by. So to, kind of fall back on my climbing experience, like I said, I climbed very few numbers of that pyramid that people, and of course, if people have the time, building a pyramid base is awesome. But I think nothing is more motivating than climbing something you're inspired by. So like I was saying, I had climbed 111A and 111B before I climbed my first 12A. And then I climbed 3 or 4 12As, a 12B and a 12C, something like that. before I climbed my first 13A. And so just climb things, especially if you're projecting. If you really get to know a route, a 13A that you know really well will probably feel easier than a 12C you don't know very well, if that makes sense. So if you
Yeah.
find something that you're inspired by, maybe, especially if you're climbing at the top of your grade, probably something that you're good at. So even if it's scary, you were saying that the vertical tech routes are scary, but you're better at them. I think it's a great, if you can find a vertical techie 13A close by that you can go back to often, and you get really acquainted with it, the falls will be less scary because you'll know what they're like, because you'll fall if you're projecting something that's at the top of your range. Um, but you'll get used to all the falls. It will no longer be scary. It'll just be about doing the moves, and the fear thing will go away once you've been on a route enough times. So if I were you personally, I would find something I'm inspired by and just go for it.
Thanks. Yeah, I really appreciate that. I feel like there's like these weird rules with climbing where it's like, no, I have to like do this many, like I have to build the pyramid, like you said, before I should like try something hard. But I'm just like so inspired by hard climbs because it's like just out of my reach. And I'm like, I know I can do it. It's just like, I just have to work really hard at it. So thank you. I appreciate the encouragement.
Yeah, of course. I think when people see me on my projects, my first like couple of times, I think everybody watching is like, that girl has no business being on that route, and I just I'm not ashamed about it. I'm just bolt to bolting, I'm struggling, I'm clipping up, I'm top roping, I'm doing whatever. And then eventually, you know, maybe 10 sessions later, like it takes time, I'll send it. And then all of that sort of embarrassment and shame, which I don't have, but if I could, I guess, basically it doesn't mean anything because now I set the route and I get the last laugh. And so, like I said, if you ever talk to people that climb with me, they will tell you my first 2 or 3 times on a route, I look like I have no business being on it. And I'm like, do I have any business even trying this? But eventually it goes. So I highly recommend
Yeah,
just trying the things you're inspired by.
that's really good to hear because I feel like a lot of times when I'm at the crag, like there's a lot of climbs that I'm inspired by at crags that are crowded. And I'm just like, oh my gosh, everyone's watching me and like I don't want to fumble on this and like yeah, like I don't have any business being on here. So no, that's super inspiring. Thank you.
Of course. And Michael,
Sorry, had to find the unmute.
I think you muted again. Sorry, could you unmute one more time?
I totally just muted myself, didn't I? So I think I'm in a similar boat to a lot of what's been discussed. I find myself having sort of short term, I want to be able to send, probably the next sort of hard grade that I want to get to. Um, but and sort of medium term, I want to get away from, so I do I either flash it or like get real close to flashing it and then I'm bored and I'm done and I just go move on to do other stuff. And yeah, like long term, there's a certain amount of want to reducing the fear that I have when I'm on the sharp end. But there is sort of things that I think I could particularly work on. I mean, there's physical conditioning and all that, but in particular, I don't take breaks. I have a hard time identifying breaks. And which I mean, like, it might be 10 bolts and I will just not stop and just run up as fast as I can. Um, I I seem to have a mental block. I don't get scared if I'm not stopping, but if I try to stop, I mean, okay, that's it, put me down. So I'm not quite sure how to tackle that per se. Um, the other problem is that I often like traveling to a crag, and so therefore there's an incentive to try everything and not spend any time working on anything difficult. So that's the other thing that I'm sort of dealing with right now. for
I
my
see.
goals.
Now, I could definitely understand the dilemma of trying, because if you project something while you're just traveling, you might go home empty-handed and the hardest thing you sent was your warm-up. That's a
Yeah,
very
definitely.
real fear, and I can definitely relate to that. So maybe projecting all the time isn't the answer, but if you are somewhere where you can be there for a few days, you can maybe not find like the mega project of your lifetime, but something that you think you can send in, if it's a 10-day trip, then, or let's say it's a 5-day trip, something that you can do in 2 days or 3 days instead of 2 tries or 3 tries.
Okay.
So, and then like you were saying, rushing up things, I think that's a problem a lot of us have, especially managing our fear. If you're just like sprinting and not thinking, it's sometimes easier to manage that fear. I think if you, a way to work on that, a way that I worked on that was breaking, like taking breaks on warm ups. So warm ups that you're not going to get afraid on. So something that you can on site easily, something that you're warming up on, shake out on a jug, find the breaks that make the most sense, even if you don't need them. Force yourself to break on easy routes so that you can get
Hmm.
into that mindset of taking breaks and then implement that on your harder projects.
Okay. Yeah, I can definitely try that, and I can definitely see how that could help.
Yeah.
Yeah. I definitely, of course, warm ups don't even. I don't take breaks on warm ups either. So yeah.
Yeah. So definitely, I think it's kind of a basic rule, but anything that you're working on, if you practice it when you're feeling safe and secure on a warm up. So for me, if I'm practicing even technique, I'll just overly use some technique that maybe isn't necessarily required to climb something easy, like back flagging all the time on a V0 or something. Something that like maybe doesn't require that back flag because I could definitely do this move without it. But by practicing that back flag and feeling how it makes that move easier, even though I didn't need it, when it comes down to actually doing it on something hard that I'm projecting, my body remembers that and just does it. So kind of like that, everything that you want to do, practice on routes that you can do or boulders that you can do, and then it. Your body will learn how to do it when you're projecting.
Okay. Thank you.
Of course, Clara.
Hey, so my specific short-term goal is I hung the draws on my first 8A 13B in Siriana, Praenota, in July. So it was 9,000 degrees and 1,000% humidity. I tried it 4 times. I made it to the chains every time, but I never got a decent day for to try red point. But I think so that's sort of my short-term goal is to send that. But the thing that I'm really struggling with and what you said really resonated, the last bolt is really hard to clip and everyone I've talked to said you have to skip it, but it comes out of a long traverse, so it's a scary, not quite safe fall. And I'm 5'3" with a -1, and so that last move after the last bolt between the last bolt and the anchors requires actually a low percentage dead point to a crimp for me where everyone else can reach it static. And I've tried it a bunch of times to find different beta that makes it a more controlled move. So I don't know if it's like a head game thing for me or looking for different beta or just sort of being okay with a scary fall. I think it's going to be safe, but it does come out of a long traverse. It's at bolt 18, so you're not going to hit the ground, but there's a potential to take a swing and hit the dihedral. So short term, I'm trying to, it's like the crux is about like 5 bolts long, and so you're pretty gassed by the time you get to that last move. So that's my short-term goal. My like medium and long-term goal, I spent the last couple of years just focusing more on bringing my trad game up to my sport level, but now I'm trying to become more all around. Like I'm terrible at bouldering. I'm real like I learned to climb at Smith Rock, so technical crimps and footwork I'm good at, but like I went to Rode AR and I couldn't even do the warm-ups. I usually on site like 12A, 12B technical, and I like hung the 12A warm-up in Rode AR that like I was like projecting everyone's warm-up. So I'm trying to become more all-around climber and sort of climb the same grade, everything. The big difficulty for me is that I had a really bad climbing accident. I had 22 reconstructive surgeries to put my leg back together. I spent 6 years on crutches, so I don't really boulder at my limit because the if I fall, it'll be catastrophic for me. I mean, maybe I should consider bouldering on a TR just so I can like learn those power moves and not risk taking a fall. I never considered doing that. It's just like I didn't even realize that was something you could do. So I'm really struggling to learn how to become more of a power climber and like develop that skill. I also live in my van and I don't have access to a gym. These are all like real first world climbing problems. Um, so it's hard to train, and I'm like the person, you know, when you talk about taking rests, like people will comment they've never seen anyone climb so slow in their life. Like uniformly, everyone's like, "Wow, you took rests on every single hold on the planet." Like it'll regularly take me like 45 minutes to an hour to climb a route, and I'll send it, but like I'm like I need to move faster because by the time I'm like bolt 17, I'm like, "Oh my God, I've been climbing for 3 hours." So
Okay, all of that is extremely relatable because I'm also an extremely slow climber. I now live in not a van, but also lived out of a van. I haven't been to a gym in a couple years, so all of that is very relatable. I don't really know what I can tell you. I probably wouldn't skip that bolt if you're gonna hit the dihedral because that sounds terrifying, and I feel like if your head is going to be extra scared at that point, I don't know if skipping that bolt is beneficial.
yeah.
It sounds like,
I don't know.
you
I
know,
mean, I've only tried it 4 times, so I was like, maybe there's other beta that I just haven't found yet that can
yeah.
make it like maybe there's a higher foot or something that can bring that crimp closer. I don't know. And then I'm like, maybe I mean, I am such a slow climber. Like maybe if I just climb faster, I won't be so scared. Like what the other person was saying, like
Yeah.
when he keeps moving, he forgets to be scared. And I'm like the biggest turtle on the planet.
Yeah, I mean, I think there is something to be said about climbing fast to get rid of the fear, but also if it's 18 bolts long, is that how long you said it was? 18 bolts?
Yeah.
Yeah, I just feel like
I think it's
resting is
like
probably
40
also
meters.
beneficial.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's long. Is you said that was in Spain?
Yeah, it's in Syria, it's in Negocie, like, it's right across from La Rambla, so it's fun because I see all the
Oh,
strong people. I'm like,
wow.
"Oh, hey, here's me on my, like, 13B project," and, like, across the canyon, Alize was working on La Rambla. So it was fun to, like, watch that happen. I was like, "Wow, that thing's even longer."
Yeah. Wow, I can only imagine. That's so awesome. Sorry that I don't really have anything more productive to say about your situation.
I'm just climbing close to that route, not on that route.
No, still, that's so awesome. I'm so jealous. That sounds amazing. Nicole, climbing goals.
Hey, so I mean, I think like for short term, I put down, I just want to get back to like my pre-COVID skill level, which like, I don't know, I feel like right now I'm making like really good progress and I should probably reach that like, within like a few weeks or so. So I'm not super worried about that. I guess like my medium goal was, it was kind of vague, but it was like to just lead with more confidence. And I feel like for me, I mean, I've mostly just been like leading in the gym as opposed to like outside. So I feel like actually like, clipping like the draws and like, I don't know, just thinking about like all like the bigger risks outside are sort of like, it's more of like a mental thing. And then also, um, yeah, I don't know. I think that's just like a mental thing. And then for like long term, just learning like to trad. Um, I don't know. I don't really do it a lot, but I really like crack climbing. So I feel like treading and crack climbing go like really, really well together. Um, so yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, definitely. And I think the trad climbing goal will help with your head game as well. I definitely did for me climbing some trad routes. Definitely made me a boulder sport climber. But some of the things that I talked about during the slideshow, I think would work really well with learning, managing your head game. Bolt to bolting is a game changer. Just being okay with taking at literally every single bolt um, until you're comfortable, and
Mhm.
learning, just acquainting yourself, making the route your friend, instead of something that has to be conquered. I know that sounds so cheesy, but that's really how I see it. Each of my projects kind of become something that I fall in love with because I know it so deeply, and I can, for a long time after sending my projects, because I have to try them over and over and over again before I send, um, I could tell you every single move. And so getting well acquainted with what you're trying to climb will just, it'll dethrone the scariness. It takes it off the scary pedestal that the route is standing on and makes it into something that's manageable. So I know that's kind of basic, but it really is just getting well acquainted with what you're climbing. And I think once you have enough friendly routes that are now your friends, uh, routes in general will become less scary.
Cool. Thanks.
Great. Anyone have any questions?
I
Or
have a
anything you want to talk
question.
about?
I'm
Yes.
like, my
I'll
friends
try to
often make fun of
answer.
me that I'm like a climbing goldfish. Like, I can't remember beta from like one session to the next. So, like, some things I can remember, but I just like, how do you remember what to do? Like, even if I try something 5 or 6 times, I might do it differently every time, and then I'm like, oh shoot, I don't remember what worked. And
Yeah,
I don't know if I'm just like really bad at remembering.
so I definitely had and still kind of have that problem. Like I said, a lot of times, even if you can climb past it, if you identify the crux, I will climb specifically. I'll just climb the crux, lower, climb it again, lower, over and over again until I know exactly, and if it's in a place where you can mark things, I'll mark them up. And then after I've done that, I will get back on the ground, close my eyes, and kind of Adam Andra visualize exactly what the movement is until it's just burned into your skull. It doesn't work every time, but that's what I do.
Okay.
I know that was very unconvincing, but yeah.
No, it's I just, yeah, I don't know, like, I usually don't, like, once I figure it out, then I just keep going, so I usually don't come back and practice it until, like, it's the next ground up attempt. And so, like, the last hard route I sent, my partner was like, "Oh, you messed up so many times, I kept getting ready to catch." He's like, "You did beta completely differently," and he thought I was following every bolt because he's like, "What are you doing? It's not what you're supposed to do." And somehow I, like, still managed to clip the chains, and I also felt that way. I was like, why does this feel so much harder? And I'm just terrible at remembering, but I mean, I think like the most tries I've given to root is like 5 or 6. So then I don't know if I was like spending enough time rehearsing.
Yeah, again, it is my personal belief that if you're sending, what you consider your hardest grade in 5 or 6 tries, you can climb a lot harder. You just haven't projected harder things. That
Yeah.
is truly my belief. So, unless you're, I guess, like literally Alex Magos or something, but
No, definitely not.
so I think, if you're on something like nails hard for you, and you are not trying to onsite anymore because it's officially a project, just immediately after you did the move, lower and force yourself to climb it, and then lower. I worked with a professional climber who is my primary climbing partner and life partner in general, and he's the one who taught me that. He wouldn't even ask me, he would just lower. I would do something and he
Okay.
would just immediately lower me back down. And that really helped me remember, instead of climbing past it because you're like, oh, I got through it, let's keep going.
Yeah.
But if it's your project and you know this isn't your send go, you might as well make it as productive as possible for when you're ready to send.
Okay.
How do you balance the like memorization with like potentially like messing up or doing something wrong? Like, should the goal be like maybe get back to that beta, or like what do you what do you think is like the right way to respond? Like you get to the crux, you realize like my left foot isn't where it should be. I can't put it where it should be. Like I need to respond in some way. Like, do you think like 2 or 3 moves later, I'll get back to where I was, or just like, what do you do in that situation?
Yes. So like Clara was saying earlier, she said, when she was projecting, she forgot all her beta and then just kind of, did whatever. And then, hello, can everyone hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, sorry. So like Clara was saying, she just kind of wung it because she forgot her beta and made it to the top, and that's absolutely a thing.
Mm-hmm.
You don't want to give up. So you don't immediately have to correct your mistakes, because
Okay.
if your foot is somewhere, it means it's somewhere, right?
Yeah.
So it's there, it's too late, it's already there. You might as well utilize it, and then maybe in 2 or 3 moves or somewhere where you can kind of, defrazzle yourself, get back on track.
Okay.
And there's absolutely nothing wrong with that.
Have you ever
questions?
tried like writing your moves down like in a notebook or anything, like, or like drawing a diagram? I like tried that one time, but I didn't know if it was helpful.
Yeah, a lot of people find it helpful. Maybe I should do it more. I actually have tried, but didn't end up using it as much. I found the method that I was talking about where I close my eyes and kind of imagine exactly what the moves are to be really productive for me. And then oftentimes I'll, say it out loud, which is kind of feels silly, but you close your eyes and you're like, right hand to right crit, like whatever it is, right? And that gets so kind of nitty gritty and nerdy, but it does work. It really works. Any other questions? Jeannie, I feel like I really kind of like slid past what your goals were. Is there anything that you wanted to talk about, or anything that the floor is open to everybody as well? Anything that we can discuss?
I guess I was wondering, when you're like working on a project and then you're taking like a complete break, like you're on the floor, like what's like a good time estimation of to like when to go back onto the wall? Because like I know that sometimes like you're supposed to take breaks and then, but you don't want to get your like, don't want to cool down too much. So just like finding that balance. Yeah, I like don't know.
Right. I think that kind of is really dependent from person to person. And it also depends on the route. Like if I'm climbing something outside that's really hard and top of my grade, sometimes I will sit still for like 25 to 30 minutes. If it's in the gym, I probably won't sit longer than 5 to 10. So it sort of depends, but if you're in the gym, and especially if you're bouldering, I would not sit for much longer than 10 to 15 minutes. And unless anyone else has other opinions, that's not like a golden rule. That's just what I personally do. Right.
I know you said you don't, or you haven't been to the gym in a while, but how do you, or what do you think is like a good way to break up or divide sessions between maybe more just like training? So like today's like endurance day, I just lap things, and like versus like I'm gonna really go like project something today. Like how do you usually like structure your like days, weeks, or sessions or anything?
Yeah, so when I was training in the gym, I was really training endurance. So I did this mega endurance training like regimen, I guess, where I would climb up, and then down climb it. Depends on how, don't do this if your gym is like packed, but if you're there at like an hour where it's not COVID and it's not packed, then so climb up, climb down, climb up, lower, wait for 1 minute, up, down, up, 1 minute, up, down, up. Do that 3 times, And then I would pick 5 routes to climb. I guess I'm not really answering your question, but I'm just going to keep talking about this. And then find
Fun and
5
dirty.
routes to climb. Yeah, back to back, like immediately.
Okay.
And I would essentially do 3 sets of what I just said, 3 times a week. And then the other 2 days, I would just project things, because just training gets really cumbersome and is not as fun as projecting. That's probably why I only project. And so I usually do like a endurance day on, or training day, fun day, training day, fun day is, and then I don't know how often you go to the gym, but for me it was 5 days a week, 3 training, 2 fun,
Okay.
or 3 endurance, 2 like power sometimes, if and no fun, unfortunately. But it kind of depended on what my goals were at the time.
And what's fun to you? But
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
okay.
Is there any other questions? Anything else anyone wants to talk about? All right, I think our time is basically up, if there's nothing else people want to talk about. I think I sent everybody an email. Did everybody get it? Like earlier yesterday or something? Yeah. Sorry, that was so last minute. But if you have any other questions, you can email me at that email address. That's obviously my personal email address. And you can also message me on Instagram. My Instagram handle is Lena, Lena Palms, Palms. If you have any questions or anything like that. And I believe that this clinic was also recorded. So I think that there's a way to get that to you as well, if you have any further questions. All right, great. Well, thank you so much for joining me today on Unlocking Crucial Data in part of the Art of the Project Cragging Classics series. I really appreciate your time. Thank you so much for being here. And I will talk to you all later on Instagram or email.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. That was great.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.